The weight of his secret was a leaden cloak, suffocating Julian. Each smile, each flawlessly executed deal, was a performance masking the truth gnawing at his soul. He was lauded as a master of corporate governance, an ethical leader, yet his own life was a tangled web of deception. Shame was his constant companion, amplified by the moral tightrope he walked daily. Then he saw her across the crowded ballroom, Elara. Her laughter was a melody that cut through the noise, her eyes pools of light in the manufactured darkness. He'd known her 4 years, a friend, a confidant, someone who saw past the CEO facade to the man beneath. But even with her, the secret remained a barrier, a silent scream trapped within his chest. The pressure of the year was relentless. The rise of AI, the constant barrage of misinformation, the fracturing of society. It all amplified the stress, the fear of exposure. As a public figure, his life was dissected and analyzed, and the thought of his secret shattering his carefully crafted image terrified him. He reached for her hand, the simple touch a lifeline in the storm raging within. "Elara," he began, the word catching in his throat. How could he confess, risk losing the one person who offered solace in his world? The words remained unspoken, the secret a heavy anchor dragging him down, threatening to drown them both in its murky depths. He was a CEO in control of a vast empire, yet a prisoner of his own making, trapped by the very identity he had so meticulously built. The weight of his silence was a physical burden, each unspoken truth a brick in the wall he was building between them. His company, his empire, his image, it all felt like a gilded cage now, trapping him with the success he'd chased. He yearned to shatter the facade, to reveal the flawed, vulnerable man beneath, but fear held him back. What if she recoiled from the truth? What if the Elara he cherished couldn't accept his past? He saw the concern etched on her face, the silent questions in her eyes. Elara, with her unwavering empathy, her uncanny ability to see beyond the surface, deserved honesty. But honesty was a luxury he wasn't sure he could afford. The secret, born of a desperate need to protect himself and those he loved, had become a monster, threatening to devour everything he held dear. The irony wasn't lost on him. He, a master of public relations, a manipulator of narratives, was utterly helpless in shaping his own story. He was caught in a crisis of his own making, a PR disaster waiting to explode. His world was built on a foundation of lies, and he knew, with chilling certainty, that the truth would eventually surface, shattering everything. He clenched his jaw, the muscles tight with tension. He had to find a way, a path through the labyrinth of deception, to reach the light of truth. He had to trust that Elara's love was strong enough to withstand the storm, that her understanding could bridge the chasm created by his silence. But how could he ask her to forgive a secret that had already poisoned their relationship? How could he expect her to embrace a truth that threatened to unravel everything they had built? The questions swirled in his mind, a tempest of doubt and fear, threatening to drown him. The weight of his secret pressed down on him, stealing his breath and clouding his judgment. He saw the joy in Elara's eyes, the unwavering faith she placed in him, and each glance felt like a fresh wound. How could he continue to bask in her light, knowing he was shrouded in darkness? The ethical leader, he strived to be felt like a cruel mockery in the face of his failings. He knew that transparency and accountability were the cornerstones of any healthy relationship, just as they were in corporate governance. But the fear of shattering Elara's perception of him, of losing the very foundation of their love, paralyzed him. He imagined her reaction, the hurt that would bloom in her eyes, the questions that would tear through their life together. Would she understand the circumstances that had led him to this point? Could she forgive the years of omission, the subtle deceptions that had become a part of their shared narrative? The weight of his secret was not just about protecting himself. It was about shielding Elara from a past she did not deserve. Yet, he knew that his silence was a form of slow-burning betrayal. It was a crisis unfolding within his heart. He longed for a skilled crisis manager to step in and guide him, to craft a narrative that would minimize the damage and pave the way for reconciliation. But this was a battle he had to fight alone, armed only with the truth and the fragile hope that love could conquer all. His secret gnawed at him, a persistent hum of cognitive dissonance that threatened to unravel his very being. He lived a life at odds with his deepest values, a tension that stretched him thin. The urge to confess, to unburden himself, was constant, yet the fear of shattering the fragile peace he'd found with Elara held him captive. It wasn't merely the act of hiding a truth. It was the mental space it occupied, the relentless brooding that eroded his soul from within. Intellectually, he knew confiding in Elara might bring relief, that he likely overestimated the severity of her judgment. But attachment theory, with its cold, clinical assessment of relationship dynamics, offered no solace. He was terrified of revealing an insecure attachment style, of confirming her worst fears about his capacity for true intimacy. Each interaction with Elara felt like a high-stakes game, every word and action calculated to anticipate her reactions and minimize the risk of exposure. He was trapped in a Nash equilibrium of his own making, where maintaining the status quo seemed the best strategy, even at the cost of his own happiness. The secrets of fictional CEOs, with their dramatic reveals and convenient resolutions, were a pale imitation of the reality he faced. His secret was a slow, insidious poison, threatening to contaminate everything he held dear. He yearned for the simplicity of those narratives, for the assurance that love could conquer all. But life, he knew, was rarely so kind. He understood cognitive dissonance intimately, the chasm between the man he wanted to be, the man worthy of her love, and the man he was, burdened by his past, stretched wider with each passing day. He was living a lie, a carefully constructed facade, designed to protect her from the truth. But the lie was suffocating him, creating a pressure that threatened to crack his composure. Attachment theory, with its emphasis on secure bonds and early experiences, mocked him. He had no secure base to return to, no foundation of trust upon which to build a healthy relationship. His childhood had been a battlefield, leaving him scarred and wary. How could he offer her the safety and security she deserved when he himself was so damaged? He was trapped in a game of his own making, a twisted version of game theory, where the only winning move was to not play at all. Every interaction with her felt like a calculated risk, a strategic maneuver to keep his secret hidden. He was constantly anticipating her moves, trying to predict the consequences of his actions. The emotional exhaustion was relentless, and should the truth ever surface, he knew he would face a crisis of epic proportions. He had no crisis communication plan, no carefully crafted message to mitigate the damage. The only certainty was that the fallout would be catastrophic, destroying everything they had built together. The psychology of secrets was a constant companion. He knew the burden he carried was slowly eroding his soul. The weight of his deception was a physical ache, a constant reminder of his unworthiness. He longed to confide in her, to unburden himself of the truth, but the fear of losing her was a powerful deterrent. Perhaps, he mused, he overestimated how harshly she would judge him. But was he willing to take that chance? He was trapped in a game of his own making, a high-stakes gamble where the only prize was her love, and the cost of losing was unimaginable. Game theory suggested he analyze every angle, calculate every move, but how could he apply logic to the chaotic, unpredictable landscape of the human heart? Their attachment, once a secure haven, was now threatened by the storm he had unwittingly brewed. He remembered the early days, the effortless connection, the way they had instinctively known how to soothe each other's fears. Now, he saw a flicker of anxiety in her eyes, a subtle withdrawal that mirrored his own internal turmoil. Was their bond strong enough to withstand the seismic shock of his revelation? Attachment theory whispered of the enduring power of secure love, but also warned of the devastating consequences of betrayal. He was caught in the throes of cognitive dissonance. His actions were a stark contradiction to the man he aspired to be, the partner she deserved. The discomfort was a relentless tormentor, fueling his anxiety and deepening his despair. He tried to rationalize his choices, to minimize the impact of his secret. but the truth was a persistent echo in the chambers of his mind. He could change his thoughts, change his perception, but could he ever truly forgive himself? The crisis was looming, an inevitable confrontation that would test the very foundations of their relationship. He knew he needed a communication strategy, a way to convey the truth with honesty and vulnerability. But how could he craft a message that would soften the blow, that would offer her a glimmer of hope amidst the wreckage of his deception? He longed for clarity, for the confidence to face her judgment, but fear held him captive in its icy grip. He grappled with cognitive dissonance, his actions at war with the man he strove to be. Each stolen moment of tenderness, each whispered promise, was tainted by the knowledge of his hidden life. He had built walls, not just around his heart, but around the truth, creating a fortress of lies that now threatened to collapse upon them both. Was their bond strong enough to withstand the tremors of his past? His attachment style, once secure and unwavering, had fractured under the weight of his secret. He longed to be her safe haven, her unwavering support, but he knew he had become a source of anxiety, a question mark etched upon her soul. How could he rebuild the trust he had so carelessly shattered? How could he prove that his love was more than just a calculated move in a twisted game? He had played a dangerous game, a high-stakes gamble, where the prize was her heart. He thought he could control the narrative, manipulate the outcome, but he had underestimated the power of love, its ability to see through the darkest deceptions. Now, he was trapped in a Nash equilibrium of his own making, where every move he made only tightened the noose around his neck. The psychology of secrets haunted him, the weight of his deception pressing down on his chest. He knew that secrets fester, that they breed resentment and mistrust. He should confide in her, tear down the walls that separated them, but fear paralyzed him. What if the truth was too much for her to bear? What if his confession shattered the fragile bond they had forged? He was a CEO with a secret, a man shrouded in mystery and intrigue. But beneath the polished veneer, beneath the ruthless ambition, lay a wounded soul, desperate for redemption. Could he find the courage to reveal his true self, to lay bare his vulnerabilities, or would his secret consume him, forever separating him from the woman he loved? The weight of his secret pressed down on him, a suffocating blanket woven from guilt and fear. He understood with chilling clarity the psychological toll of keeping such a burden hidden. It wasn't just withholding information. It was a constant erosion of his soul, a slow poisoning of his spirit. Each day spent with Amelia was a tightrope walk, balancing the joy of her nearness with the agonizing knowledge of his deception. He felt the gnawing of cognitive dissonance, his actions loving Amelia, building a life with her, in direct conflict with his deeply buried secret. The unease was a constant companion, the second-guessing a relentless tormentor. He tried to justify his silence, telling himself the truth would shatter their fragile happiness, but the rationalizations rang hollow, even to his own ears. His attachment style, once securely anchored, now felt frayed and insecure. He longed to be completely vulnerable with Amelia, to share every facet of his being, but the fear of rejection, of losing her love, held him captive. He saw the potential for a Nash equilibrium in their relationship, a stable but suboptimal state where they remained together, bound by affection, but forever separated by the chasm of his secret. He knew, deep down, that true intimacy demanded complete honesty, a willingness to risk everything for the chance of profound connection. He wrestled with the thought of betrayal trauma, of the devastating impact his secret would have on Amelia if she ever discovered the truth. The prospect of inflicting such pain on her, of shattering her trust in him, was unbearable. He knew that healing from such a betrayal would be a long and arduous process, a journey fraught with pain and uncertainty. Could their love survive such a seismic shock? He knew he needed a communication strategy, a way to deliver the difficult news with empathy and understanding. He needed to choose the right time and place, to create a safe space where Amelia could process her emotions without feeling overwhelmed. He needed to be direct and honest, avoiding sugarcoating or minimizing the impact of his actions. But most of all, he needed to be brave enough to face the consequences of his truth, whatever they may be. He knew that revealing his secrets was a gamble, a desperate roll of the dice, but he also knew that living a lie was no longer an option. He owed it to Amelia, and to himself, to break free from the shackles of his past and embrace the possibility of a future built on honesty and trust. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril, but he was ready to face it, hand in hand with the woman he loved, no matter the cost. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the frantic rhythm of his own heart. He watched Amelia, her expression an unreadable mosaic of confusion and burgeoning hurt. The air crackled with unspoken questions, with the weight of the secret he had guarded for so long. He had to tell her. Now, there's something you need to know, he began, his voice a low rasp that barely disturbed the stillness. Something about my past, about who I really am. He paused, searching her eyes, willing her to understand, to forgive him for the deception he was about to reveal. He told her everything, the truth about his family, the circumstances of his rise to power, the choices he had made, choices he now regretted with every fiber of his being. He laid bare the vulnerability he usually kept hidden, exposing the raw, wounded core of his soul. As the words tumbled out, he saw the light in Amelia's eyes slowly dim. The warmth he had come to cherish was replaced by a chilling frost of disbelief and pain. How could you? She whispered, the question laced with a sorrow that cut deeper than any blade. How could you keep something like this from me? He reached for her hand, but she recoiled, her touch as cold as the winter wind. Amelia, please, he pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation. I know I messed up. I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid of losing you. And now? She asked, her voice barely audible. Are you not afraid now? He closed his eyes, the truth a bitter pill on his tongue. I'm terrified, he confessed, but I love you, Amelia, more than anything in the world, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. Tears streamed down her face, silent testament to the depth of her anguish. He longed to hold her, to comfort her, but he knew he had no right. He had broken something precious, something fragile, and he didn't know if it could ever be repaired. I need time, she said finally, her voice trembling. I need time to process this, to figure out what I want. He nodded, his heart sinking. He knew he deserved her anger, her rejection. He had betrayed her trust, and now he had to face the consequences. I understand, he said, his voice heavy with regret. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting, and hoping, praying that one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me. He watched as she turned and walked away, her silhouette disappearing into the shadows. He was left alone in the gathering darkness. The weight of his secret lifted, but replaced by an even heavier burden, the fear that he had lost the only thing that truly mattered. The CEO's secret was out, but the battle for his heart had just begun. The following weeks dissolved into a period of profound introspection and agonizing self-assessment. He wrestled with the psychological impact of his secrecy, the insidious way it had gnawed at his conscience and poisoned his relationships. He recognized the cognitive dissonance he had been living with, the inherent conflict between his actions and his deeply held values, and the elaborate lengths he had undertaken to justify his choices. He delved into the core principles of attachment theory, striving to understand how his own ingrained insecurities and pervasive fears of vulnerability had insidiously shaped his behavior. He saw with painful clarity how his avoidant tendencies had created an unyielding distance between himself and those he genuinely cared about, inadvertently pushing away the very people who could have offered him solace and unwavering support during his darkest hours. He knew with absolute certainty that he needed to communicate, to discover a viable way to bridge the seemingly insurmountable chasm that his secret had irrevocably created. He researched effective communication strategies specifically designed for delivering difficult and potentially devastating news, understanding the paramount importance of unwavering honesty, genuine empathy, and impeccable timing. He knew he had to be meticulously prepared to face the inevitable consequences of his actions, to accept full and unreserved responsibility for the profound pain he had inflicted upon others. He even meticulously considered the fundamental principles of game theory, striving to understand how his past decisions had been primarily driven by an overwhelming desire to protect himself. Even if it meant acting at the significant expense of others, he saw how the precarious Nash equilibrium, his relationships, had insidiously led to a superficially stable, but ultimately deeply unsatisfying state, where genuine happiness remained perpetually elusive for everyone involved. He understood now, with a chilling clarity, the truly devastating impact of betrayal trauma, the insidious way it could shatter a person's fundamental sense of reality and irrevocably damage their self-worth. He knew, with a weight of guilt, that he had personally inflicted that profound trauma on the woman he professed to love, and he was now resolutely determined to do absolutely everything within his power to help her heal from the deep wounds he had caused. He knew, without any illusions, that the road ahead would be agonizingly long and arduous, fraught with unforeseen challenges and potential setbacks. However, he was unequivocally willing to do whatever it ultimately took to earn back her shattered trust and painstakingly rebuild their fractured relationship from the ground up. He was no longer the same man who had desperately clung to his damaging secret, driven by primal fear and base self-preservation. He had undergone a profound transformation. He was now a man who had finally faced his innermost demons, openly acknowledged his egregious mistakes, and was resolutely ready to fight with every fiber of his being for the precious love that he had so carelessly almost lost forever. Scarlett Jones had always considered herself an average woman, but standing in the grand foyer of Alexander's penthouse, with the glittering city lights behind him, she felt anything but. His every word, every hesitant touch, every tear-filled apology echoed in her mind, a symphony of remorse and the desperate plea for forgiveness. Yet, forgiveness felt like a distant shore, a place she desperately wanted to reach, but a treacherous sea separated them. He had bared his soul, revealing the CEO's secret that had haunted him, the fear that had driven him to betray her trust. The revelation had shattered her world, leaving her adrift in a sea of confusion and pain. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than she ever imagined, precisely because it came from the man she loved, the man she thought she knew. Looking into his eyes, she saw a vulnerability that mirrored her own. The ruthless CEO's mask had crumbled, replaced by a raw, desperate plea. But could she trust what she saw? Could she risk opening her heart again, knowing the pain it could bring? Theories swirled in her mind, fragments of conversations with her therapist piecing themselves together. Attachment theory. Was her anxious, preoccupied style driving her need for reassurance, making her vulnerable to his actions? Cognitive dissonance. Was her love for him blinding her to the red flags she had unconsciously ignored? Betrayal trauma. Had his actions fundamentally altered her ability to trust, to love without fear? He stepped closer, his hand reaching out, hesitating as if afraid to touch her. "Scarlett," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I cannot undo the past, but I promise you, with every breath I take, I will spend the rest of my life earning back your trust. I will be transparent, honest, and vulnerable with you. I will learn to communicate, to truly listen to your needs, to create a safe space where we can rebuild what we lost." His words were a balm to her wounded soul, yet a part of her remained guarded. Trauma-informed care. He was trying. She could see that. He was acknowledging the impact of his actions, creating an environment of safety and transparency. But could she truly heal in his presence? The very source of her pain. She thought of the Spikes model, the communication strategy for delivering bad news. He had, in his own way, followed its principles, setting the stage, acknowledging her perception, inviting her to understand, delivering the truth, empathizing with her pain, and strategizing a path forward. But this was not just about delivering bad news. It was about rebuilding a shattered foundation. "Alexander," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "trust isn't something you can simply earn back with words. It takes time, consistency, and a willingness to face the consequences of your actions. It means understanding the depth of the wound you inflicted and committing to the long, arduous journey of healing." He nodded, his eyes unwavering. I understand, and I am ready. I am ready to do whatever it takes. No matter how long it takes. Just tell me what you need. Tell me what I can do to start." His sincerity resonated within her, a fragile flicker of hope igniting in the darkness. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for them, but it would require more than promises. It would require a leap of faith, a willingness to confront her own fears, and a shared commitment to building a new foundation of trust, honesty, and unwavering love. The game theory of their relationship had shifted. The Nash equilibrium had been disrupted. Could they find a new balance, a new way to coexist, not just as CEO and average woman, but as two souls yearning for connection and enduring love? Only time would tell. Scarlett felt the weight of his betrayal or physical blow, a cold fist clenching around her heart. It wasn't just the act itself, but the insidious way it had eroded her sense of self, her ability to trust her own judgment. Betrayal trauma, she realized with a chilling clarity, wasn't a singular event. It was a landscape of shifting sands, where the ground beneath her feet was never solid. She thought of Dr. Aris Thorne, the man who had vowed to cherish and protect her, yet had inflicted such profound pain. How could someone so brilliant, so seemingly empathetic, be capable of such deception? Cognitive dissonance gnawed at her. The man she loved, the man she thought she knew, was at odds with the man who had betrayed her trust. The chasm between those two realities felt insurmountable. She knew, intellectually, that healing was possible. Trauma-informed care emphasized safety, trustworthiness, and empowerment. But how could she feel safe when the very person she craved safety from had shattered her world? How could she trust when the foundation of her trust had crumbled into dust? The concepts from her psychology books swam in her head, offering little solace. Attachment theory painted a bleak picture. Her anxious, preoccupied style, her deep-seated fear of abandonment, had made her vulnerable to his manipulations. She had craved his love, his validation, so intensely that she had ignored the red flags, the subtle inconsistencies that now screamed in her memory. Yet, even in the depths of despair, a flicker of hope remained. Attachment styles could evolve. She could learn to cultivate a secure attachment within herself, to find her own sense of worth and belonging. Independent of Aris, it would be a long and arduous journey, a climb up a treacherous mountain, but she refused to be defined by her trauma. She would choose to rewrite her story, to reclaim her power, and to build a future where love was not synonymous with pain, but a sanctuary of safety, honesty, and mutual respect. The Spikes model for delivering bad news seemed almost cruelly ironic now. She was the one who needed to hear the truth, to acknowledge the depth of her wounds, and to chart a course toward healing. And she would. Scarlett found herself drawn to the research on attachment theory, each style resonating with different facets of her past relationships, the anxious, preoccupied echoes of her youthful insecurities, the dismissive, avoidant walls she had built to protect herself, and the fearful, avoidant dance she had unknowingly engaged in with Liam, craving intimacy while simultaneously fearing its potential for destruction. It was a chillingly accurate map of her heart's tumultuous journey. Cognitive dissonance, too, became a lens through which she examined her choices. The conflict between her deep-seated belief, Liam's inherent goodness, and the undeniable evidence of his betrayal created a chasm within her, a psychological battlefield where her love and her pain clashed relentlessly. She had justified his actions, minimized his flaws, all in an attempt to reconcile the man she loved with the man who had shattered her trust. Game theory offered a detached, almost clinical perspective on the dynamics of their relationship. The Nash equilibrium, the point where neither party could improve their position by changing their strategy alone, felt like a damning indictment of their stagnant, unhappy equilibrium. They had both settled into roles, unspoken agreements that prioritized stability over genuine happiness, each afraid to disrupt the precarious balance. But it was the research on betrayal trauma that truly resonated with her soul. The violation of trust by someone she depended on for safety and love. The betrayal blindness that had allowed her to ignore the red flags, the insidious impact on her ability to trust and feel safe. It was all there, laid bare in the stark language of academic research. She recognized the symptoms of PTSD, the anxiety that gnawed at her, the depression that threatened to engulf her, the profound difficulty in forming new relationships. And then there was the concept of institutional betrayal, the failure of systems to protect individuals from harm. In Scollett's case, it was the unspoken code of silence within Liam's company, the way his actions were condoned or ignored, the subtle pressures to overlook his indiscretions. It was a betrayal that extended beyond Liam himself, a systemic failure that amplified her pain and eroded her faith in justice. Trauma-informed care offered a glimmer of hope. The principles of safety, trustworthiness, collaboration, and empowerment felt like a lifeline, a pathway toward healing and recovery. She envisioned creating a sanctuary within herself, a space where she could feel safe, where she could trust her own instincts, where she could reclaim her voice and her power. As Scollett delved deeper into her research, she stumbled upon an article titled "The CEO's Secret." The headline alone sent a jolt through her, a strange mix of curiosity and trepidation. It was a story about Scollett Jones, an average woman. She paused, her heart pounding in her chest. What secrets could a CEO possibly hold that would resonate with her own pain, her own journey toward healing? The article detailed Scollett Jones's rise from an unassuming background to the helm of a Fortune 500 company. It wasn't just a tale of corporate success. It was a raw, honest account of her battle with betrayal trauma. The CEO, it turned out, had navigated a treacherous landscape of personal and professional deceit, mirroring Scollett's own experiences in ways that felt both uncanny and deeply validating. As she absorbed each word, Scollett recognized the familiar patterns, the initial shock, the denial, the slow, agonizing process of piecing together the truth. The article described how Scollett Jones had initially dismissed the red flags, unconsciously turning a blind eye to the subtle signs of betrayal, a phenomenon experts call betrayal blindness. She had buried her instincts, her intuition, all in the name of maintaining a fragile sense of normalcy. The CEO's story echoed the findings of Dr. Jennifer Freyd's research. The betrayal, inflicted by those closest to her, had triggered a primal survival response. Just like Scollett, the CEO had learned to compartmentalize, to suppress her emotions in order to function in a world that suddenly felt hostile and unpredictable. But what struck Scollett most was the CEO's journey toward healing. The article outlined her embrace of trauma-informed care, her commitment to creating a safe and supportive environment for herself and her employees. It described her exploration of attachment theory, her understanding of how early childhood experiences had shaped her relationships and left her vulnerable to manipulation. The CEO had sought therapy, confronting her anxious, preoccupied attachment style and learning to establish healthy boundaries. She had delved into the complexities of game theory, recognizing the patterns of conflict and cooperation in her relationships, both personal and professional. She had even used the Spikes model to navigate difficult conversations, delivering bad news with empathy and compassion. The article illuminated the CEO's understanding of cognitive dissonance, how she had grappled with the conflicting beliefs about the people she trusted, the dissonance creating emotional turmoil that threatened to overwhelm her. It detailed her conscious effort to reconcile those conflicting beliefs, to find a way to move forward without sacrificing her own integrity. The CEO's secret wasn't a magic formula or a quick fix. It was a testament to the power of awareness, resilience, and self-compassion. It was a reminder that healing from betrayal trauma was a long and arduous journey, but one that was ultimately possible. As Scollett finished reading, a wave of hope washed over her. If this woman, this powerful CEO, could navigate such profound pain and emerge stronger, then maybe, just maybe, she could too. Scollett closed the book, the image of the composed, successful CEO now overlaid with a newfound vulnerability. The revelation that even those who seemed to have it all together battled their own inner demons was strangely comforting. It chipped away at the isolating belief that she was alone in her suffering. The CEO's story resonated with the complex tapestry of her own experiences, particularly the painful realization of Liam's betrayal. She recognized the familiar sting of cognitive dissonance, the agonizing conflict between the Liam she loved and the Liam who had shattered her trust. The book had illuminated betrayal trauma in a way that therapy hadn't quite managed. It wasn't just about the infidelity. It was about the violation of the implicit agreement of safety and love within their relationship. It was the betrayal blindness she had unknowingly practiced, ignoring the subtle red flags that her intuition had tried to wave. The concept of attachment styles also struck a chord. Was she anxiously attached, her insecurities amplified by Liam's emotional unavailability, or was she developing a fearful avoidance style, craving connection but terrified of being hurt again? The book offered no easy answers, but it provided a framework for understanding her reactions and navigating the treacherous waters of her emotions. A shiver ran down her spine as she considered the Spikes protocol for delivering bad news. Liam hadn't used any such strategy. There had been no warning, no empathy, just a cold, detached confession that left her reeling. The contrast between the compassionate communication outlined in the book and the brutal reality of her experience with Liam was stark and infuriating. Even game theory seemed to offer a sliver of insight. Had their relationship devolved into a Nash equilibrium of sorts, a stable but ultimately unsatisfying arrangement where neither of them was truly happy? But neither was willing to risk the discomfort of change. Scarlett knew that healing wouldn't be linear. There would be setbacks and moments of despair. But the CEO's secret, the emphasis on self-compassion and resilience, gave her a glimmer of hope. Trauma-informed care, with its focus on safety, trustworthiness, and empowerment, felt like a path forward. Perhaps, with the right support and a commitment to her own well-being, she could emerge from this darkness stronger, wiser, and more whole than she had ever been before. The road ahead remained shrouded in mist, the memories of betrayal clawing at her like shadows in the night. One evening, city lights blurring through her rain-streaked window, Scarlett is paralyzed by a familiar wave of anxiety. Doubts gnaw at her. Is she worthy of love? Can she ever truly trust again? Cognitive dissonance, Dr. Hayes explained, is the mind's battleground where beliefs and actions clash. Scarlett longs for connection, for intimacy, but the fear of repeating past mistakes holds her captive. She wants to believe in happy endings, yet the scars of betrayal whisper cautionary tales, a constant chorus of what-ifs and could-have-beens. Driven by a desperate need for clarity, Scarlett reaches out to Liam. His voice, a warm current against the storm within her, offers solace, a beacon in her personal tempest. He listens patiently as she unravels her fears, acknowledging the pain without judgment. He speaks of attachment styles, of how her anxious, preoccupied tendencies might be amplified by the trauma she has endured, offering insights rather than solutions. It's not about changing who you are, Scarlett, Liam says gently. It's about understanding why you feel the way you do, and learning to navigate those feelings with compassion and self-awareness. His words are a balm to her wounded spirit. He confesses his own struggles with a dismissive avoidant style, a tendency to retreat when emotions run high, a self-protective mechanism honed over years. He admits that he has been terrified of vulnerability, of letting anyone get too close. But Scarlett's unwavering honesty has chipped away at his defenses, revealing the possibility of a connection deeper than he had ever imagined, a bond that transcends his carefully constructed walls. That night, they talk 4 hours, dissecting their fears, their insecurities, their hopes for the future. It isn't a magical cure, but it is a start, a fragile bridge built on honesty and a willingness to confront the shadows that haunt them both. As the first rays of dawn paint the sky, Scarlett feels a flicker of optimism, a fragile hope blooming in the darkness. Maybe, just maybe, they can find their Nash equilibrium, a place where both their needs are met, where love isn't a battlefield, but a sanctuary. But the path ahead is fraught with peril. They are not starting from a clean slate. They are burdened by years of unspoken resentments, buried traumas, and deeply ingrained patterns of behavior. The betrayal cuts deep, leaving scars that may never fully heal. Scarlett grapples with the cognitive dissonance of loving a man who has caused her so much pain. How can she reconcile the image of the man she fell in love with, the man who makes her laugh and holds her close, with the man who shattered her trust? It's a constant tug-of-war between her heart and her head. Their attachment styles, once a comfortable dance, now clash like discordant notes in a jarring symphony. Liam, the dismissive avoidant, struggles to offer the emotional reassurance Scarlett, the anxious preoccupied, desperately craves. Every attempt at intimacy feels like navigating a minefield, each step fraught with the risk of triggering old wounds. They need a new language, a new way of communicating that transcends their ingrained defenses, a Rosetta Stone for their hearts. Perhaps the Spikes protocol, designed for delivering bad news with empathy, could be adapted to their situation, a structured way to navigate the difficult conversations that lie ahead, to speak their truths without causing further harm. They embark on a journey of trauma-informed care, not just for themselves, but for their relationship. Safety becomes paramount, a safe space to express their vulnerabilities without judgment, a haven from the storms of the past. Trustworthiness, a fragile commodity, must be rebuilt brick by brick, with transparency and unwavering honesty. They seek peer support, finding solace in the stories of others who have navigated the treacherous waters of betrayal and forgiveness, a reminder that they are not alone. They delve into therapy, both individually and as a couple, confronting the demons that have haunted them for so long. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing EMDR becomes a lifeline, helping them process the traumatic memories that hold them captive, freeing them from the shackles of the past. Scarlett begins to understand that healing isn't about forgetting, but about integrating the pain into her story, about reclaiming her power and choosing a different path, becoming the author of her own destiny. Liam, in turn, confronts his own patterns of avoidance, learning to embrace vulnerability and offer the emotional support Scarlett needs. It is a slow, arduous process, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt. But with each small step forward, their bond deepens, their love transforms. They are not the same people they were before, but perhaps, just perhaps, they can emerge from the ashes stronger, wiser, and more deeply connected than they ever imagined. Like a phoenix rising, they have the chance to build something new from the ruins of the old. The journey is fraught with peril, not unlike navigating a minefield of unspoken fears and buried resentments. Scarlett, haunted by the spectre of betrayal trauma, struggles to reconcile her desire for intimacy with her profound fear of being hurt again. Sleepless nights are spent dissecting Liam's every word, every gesture, searching for hidden meanings, for signs of impending abandonment. Cognitive dissonance gnaws at her, the conflict between her love for Liam and her ingrained belief that she is somehow unworthy of it. It's a constant battle against the voices in her head. Liam, once a fortress of stoicism, finds himself disoriented by the sheer force of Scarlett's emotional vulnerability. He grapples with his dismissive avoidant attachment style, the ingrained habit of retreating behind walls of self-sufficiency whenever intimacy threatens to overwhelm him. He recognizes the pattern, the way he unconsciously sabotages closeness, and it terrifies him. He doesn't want to lose Scarlett, but he doesn't know how to be the man she needs. He's caught between his desire for connection and his fear of engulfment. They seek guidance, finding solace in therapeutic principles. Therapy becomes their sanctuary, a space where they can dismantle the barriers that separate them, piece by painful piece. They learn to communicate with radical honesty, to name their fears, to validate each other's experiences. Liam approaches difficult conversations with empathy and compassion, mindful of Scarlett's fragility. Scarlett, in turn, learns to challenge her negative thought patterns, to recognize the cognitive distortions that fuel her anxiety. They are learning to speak each other's language, to understand the unspoken needs beneath the surface. Slowly, painstakingly, they begin to rewrite their narrative. Liam confronts his fear of vulnerability, allowing himself to be seen, to be known, in all his flawed humanity. Scarlett starts to dismantle the walls she has built around her heart, tentatively reaching out, trusting that Liam will be there to catch her as she falls. They discover the power of secure attachment, the profound sense of safety and belonging that comes from knowing you are loved, unconditionally, for who you are. It is not a fairy tale, but a testament to the resilience of the human heart, the transformative power of love, and the courage it takes to heal. It's a messy, imperfect, and ultimately hopeful story, but their journey is far from over. Liam, haunted by his past, grapples with the cognitive dissonance of his actions. He knows he wants to be the man Scarlett deserves, yet the weight of his secrets threatens to pull him under. The Spikes protocol he once used in sterile hospital rooms now becomes a desperate framework for communicating his truth to Scarlett. Each step a painful confession, each revelation a potential breaking point. He's walking a tightrope, balancing the need for honesty with the fear of shattering her world. Scarlett, in turn, finds herself battling the insidious tendrils of betrayal trauma. The man she loves, the man she thought she knew, is now shrouded in a web of deceit. Flashbacks of stolen moments, replayed through the lens of his betrayal, leave her breathless and disoriented. She questions her judgment, her intuition, her very sanity. Is their love a carefully constructed illusion? A house of cards built on a foundation of lies? She's trapped in a hall of mirrors, unable to distinguish reality from perception. They are caught in a delicate dance, a high-stakes game of emotional chess where the Nash equilibrium feels agonizingly out of reach. Each move carries the weight of their shared history, their hopes for the future, and the ever-present threat of irreparable damage. Can they find a way to rewrite the rules of their game, to create a new equilibrium based on honesty and trust? The stakes are higher than ever. In the depths of their pain, they begin to explore the principles of trauma-informed care. Liam learns to approach Scarlett with unwavering safety and transparency, creating a space where she can voice her fears and reclaim her power. Scarlett, in turn, discovers the importance of self-compassion, recognizing that healing is not a linear process, but a messy, unpredictable journey. Together, they learn to resist re-traumatization, to navigate their relationship with mindful awareness, and to honor the wounds that have shaped them both. They are learning to be gentle with themselves and with each other, recognizing that healing takes time and patience.